Wow. What's good? It's Woog. There is reportedly a verbal agreement between Keith Thurman and Sebastian Fundora. Now, this is a verbal agreement according to Lance Pugmire of Boxing Scene. So it sounds like this just falls short of an official announcement since there are probably details that have to be hashed out. But if this is true, and if they are really on their way to putting together Sebastian Fundora's next title defense against Keith Thurman, this is supposed to be for October 18th. Sebastian Fundora just beat Tim Tszyu a few weeks ago. But if this is really going to happen, hats off to Keith Thurman for really wanting this smoke. I mean, remember, Keith Thurman was supposed to fight Tim Tszyu in a non-title fight. Keith Thurman had to pull out. That's another thing. I hope that if this is supposed to be made, that this in fact does go through and Keith Thurman doesn't succumb to another injury. But he was supposed to fight Tim Tszyu, had to pull out because I think it was a hand injury. And then they put in Sebastian Fundora as a late replacement for Keith Thurman. So, Tim Tszyu basically went from preparing to fight the 5'7"-ish Keith Thurman to fighting the 6'5" southpaw Sebastian Fundora. And I mean, the rest is history. This changed a lot of careers. Thanks, Keith. But if Keith Thurman is serious about fighting Sebastian Fundora, challenging for his title, I'm thinking like, what the hell are you doing, Keith? Like, look, when they made Tim Tszyu versus Keith Thurman, I was thinking Tim Tszyu was going to win that fight. I mean, look, Keith Thurman is an excellent boxer, at least through the prime of his career. In the mid 2010s, he was beating, a prime Sean Porter, a prime Danny Garcia. And before that, Keith Thurman had some significant wins against Robert Guerrero, against Diego Chavez. Look up that one and look at what that meant at the time when you had those two rising fighters. But Keith Thurman, excellent fighter in his prime. He was looking like he was on his way to becoming a Hall of Famer. Like he had collected the WBA and WBC 147-pound title. So he was kind of the man for a moment at welterweight in the, we'll say, post-Mayweather, post-Pacquiao era. Now, I know that Pacquiao just fought and had fought years after that. But I'm saying post-prime Mayweather, Pacquiao, basically when you had Keith Thurman, Kell Brook, and then you had a younger and rising Errol Spence. At the time, Keith Thurman, I really wanted to see Keith Thurman versus Kell Brook. That's the fight that I really wanted to see. But there wasn't any consensus at that time that Errol Spence was better than Keith Thurman. No, like Keith Thurman was looking like he might be the cream of the crop. He went from being one-time Keith Thurman knockout artist to developing a well-rounded boxing style where he was good defensively, his timing was excellent, his feet, his movement were really good. He was putting all of his tools together and becoming a really good boxer puncher. And then after that win against Danny Garcia, where he became a unified welterweight champion, he disappeared for like more than 2 years. He had injury after injury, nagging injuries that basically occupied the rest of his prime years. He came back a couple years later and fought Josecito Lopez. He won the fight, but he got badly hurt like in the middle rounds. And it wasn't looking like the same Keith Thurman. Then he fights a 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao. He gets dropped in the first round, rallies back and makes it a super competitive fight, but loses to Manny Pacquiao. Till this day, that is still Keith Thurman's only loss, a close decision loss to Manny Pacquiao. And then he came back another couple years later against Mario Barrios, won that one via decision. But if you look at Keith Thurman's, last several years of his career, basically since he beat Sean Porter and Danny Garcia, everything after that, there have been so many, and I mean multiple, multi-year layoffs. Again, a 2-year layoff after the Danny Garcia win, or the win over Danny Garcia, a 2.5-year layoff after the loss to Manny Pacquiao. So between Pacquiao and the Barrios fight, 2.5 years. And then after the Barrios fight, another 3 years out of the ring. Now, granted, he had tried to come back before that 3-year mark, but he got injured before the Tim Tszyu fight, so that kept him out of the ring. But it was 3 years, and then he returned to the ring and beat a totally outmatched Brock Jarvis up at 154. That's Keith Thurman's one fight at 154. Now he's going to be going against the towering Inferno, supposedly verbally agreed to again. I mean, the only thing I could think is that Keith Thurman, people were speculating about how much he wanted to continue fighting and how much motivation was still there. And Keith Thurman himself said that maybe the same hunger wasn't there. But then when you hear him in subsequent interviews, he's like, no, the hunger is back. Keith Thurman is back, baby, this and that. Keith Thurman must really want to become a Hall of Famer because, again, I thought that he was on his way. But, the several years after, we'll say 2017 was the end of his prime, the past 8 years haven't been great. They've been but they haven't been great, and they've been super inactive. So if he goes up to 154 after becoming a unified champ at 147 and he beats the towering inferno, Sebastian Fundora, who's coming off of the 2 wins against Tim Tszyu and most recently stopping Tim Tszyu. He fought Cordell Booker between those 2 Tim Tszyu fights, but Sebastian Fundora is kind of seen as he's one of the 2 or 3 best fighters right now at 154, but he was a unified champion, had to cough one of those belts up because he didn't want to fight the mandatory and instead ran it back against Tim Tszyu. But if Keith Thurman is able to go up and beat Sebastian Fundora, becoming a 154-pound champion, you then kind of have to revisit is Keith Thurman a Hall of Famer talk. Now, I think that that's a tall task. I mean, pun intended. Keith Thurman is going to have his hands full here. I mean, we're talking about a 6'5" southpaw with a lot of volume who basically keeps the pressure on, keeps the punches flowing. And Keith Thurman, in order to compete well in this one, he's got to move and be totally out of the pocket and then come in and be meaningful when you come back in. That's what Tim Tszyu was trying to do. Stay out of harm's way and then come in with your hard shots and then get the hell out of the way once you come in and throw what you want to throw, because Sebastian Fundora will hit you with an uppercut. He'll shorten his punches and fight you mid to short range, close range. I mean, what's Keith Thurman really going to do here? Do you see him out-sweet sciencing the guy who's almost a foot taller than him without just getting punished by a barrage of punches, accurate punches? Like, Sebastian Fundora doesn't just throw, he throws pretty accurately and he places his punches well. Keith Thurman, again, at his best, excellent boxer puncher, but that was at 147. He's fighting this physical anomaly. If this happens, he's fighting a physical anomaly in Sebastian Fundora. I just see this going all types of wrong for Keith Thurman. Like, if he's able to put together a winning performance here, I'm just trying to think of how he's going to do it. Like, does Keith Thurman have better than a Brian Mendoza puncher's chance in this one? Is Keith Thurman going to be able to win rounds here, like sustainably win rounds against Fundora? Man, maybe, but he's really going to have to turn back the clock. I don't make too much out of him stopping Brock Jarvis. Yes, it was pretty impressive, but on a lower level. Like, Brock Jarvis was stopped by Liam Paro, a 140 guy. Yeah, I don't see how this goes well for Keith Thurman, but hats off to accepting this fight. I'm really curious to see what the game plan is against a Sebastian Fundora. Like, we've seen Erickson Lubin try to fight in the phone booth and end up getting bludgeoned and disfigured facially, basically, against Fundora. What is Keith Thurman going to do? Let me know what you think the strategy for Keith Thurman should be here. But I think that he's really trying for greatness. Again, if he beats Sebastian Fundora, you have to reassess his Hall of Fame prospects. Maybe he still falls short, but if he does, it's really not by much if he's able to pull this off. But let me know your thoughts on this. We'll call it preliminary news. It's not yet official, but if they are headed down this path, it would be disappointing to see them take it this far where you've got Lance Pugmire reporting on it and then the conversation falls apart because Keith Thurman isn't being paid enough, especially in this boxing landscape. Who knows if they're going to be able to put this together? Like, is this going to require some Turki Al-Sheikh involvement, or is this going to be PBC only, able to make this? I mean, I'm assuming it would be a prime pay-per-view, Sebastian Fundora versus Keith Thurman. But those are my earliest thoughts. I don't see this going well for Keith Thurman. I'm going to be pulling for him, but I mean, damn, the guy is 36 years old. If this takes place in October, he's going to be 1 month away from being 37 years old. You've got the, 27-year-old Sebastian Fundora in his prime, stopping the likes of Tim Tszyu. Whew, this will probably be a career best performance if Keith Thurman could pull this off. Look, it was highly significant that he beat Sean Porter, Danny Garcia in those close fights at welterweight. But if he then goes up and beats Sebastian Fundora at 154 at this stage of Keith Thurman's career, that will be the crown jewel of his career. And again, you really have to consider him for the Hall of Fame at that point. Like, it's not so much the 2-division champ thing. We get a lot of that. It's who did you beat to become a divisional champ in one division? Who did you beat to become a unified champ in that same division? And then who did you beat to become a champion in that next division? Let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments. First of all, do you think it's going to go down? There's still so many variables. Is Keith Thurman going to be able to stay healthy? Are they in fact going to be able to iron out those last few details to make this official? I hope it goes down. I'm surprised by the news. I know they were angling for it, when Sebastian Fundora ran it back against Tim Tszyu. Keith Thurman was in the house. He did some some side commentary, and he expressed his interest in taking on the winner here. I mean, again, he was trying to fight Tim Tszyu. So yeah, Keith Thurman, say what you want about him. It has been extremely frustrating watching the last several years of his career, but he does seem to want to fight the best. He's not wasting his time. I know he fought Brock Jarvis, but I think that was just to get your feet wet again. If he fights Sebastian Fundora, tip of the hat to Keith Thurman. I just don't think, gut feeling, I don't think it's going to go well for him. Let me know your thoughts on this one. And if Keith Thurman is going to have some success here, how will he do it? Let me know your thoughts. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.